All right, so now what we need to do is actually hook up these animation clips that we've made. We have 3 of them, and you can have obviously more, into, our thing here. So to do that, you would go Window, Animator. Make sure, there's animation, there's animator. So I already have that tab here. So what you got to do is you select the character, and then you will see a series of stuffs here. All right, so basically entry is obviously this is what happens when the game first starts. It's going to go into idle, and then it sits on idle. Okay. And then idle can go from idle, not standing. You can either go into run or jump. You can do either one of those. So what we have to do is make a transition. So I'm going to right click over this and go make transition, and then I'm just going to click like a normal left click. Bam! It's gonna, so I can go there, and I can go make transition, and I can go there. So basically from idle I can go into run. Well, I can go from running and I can go back to idling, right? Because I can stop running. Otherwise I'm just going to go into run. I'll just keep running. So I'm going to right click, make transition, and go back to idle. Same thing with jumping. Once you go up, you usually come down. Make transition, back to idle. That being said, I can also go from a run to a jump, right? So make transition, boom, and I can also go from a jump to a run. There you go. Okay, so basically we have a trifecta here. All right, so basically we made it so we can go to each one of these. But what we need to do next is actually hook up. We can transition from one to the other, but we have to make a decision on how we do that. All right. So to do that, we have these layers. Go to parameters. We're going to set parameters that say, okay, once you get up to a certain speed, and if you're on the ground, you can run. If you're not on the ground, you're jumping. So that's basically what we're going to do. So I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to add a new float. All right, because we're going to determine the speed by a float, and we're just going to write speed. All right. I'm going to click on make another one, and it's going to be a Boolean, which is true or false. And we're going to say ground. Okay. So basically, those are the 2 things that are going to determine whether you're running or you're jumping. So now what we're going to do is, with that selected, I got this idle arrow up to run. So I'm going to click on this transition. So to go from idle to run, I need this to happen. I need these conditions. So I'm going to click underneath the conditions. It's going to say speed. My speed should be greater than, and we're going to say 0.025. Okay, so I have to be moving basically, and it goes into run. All right. And besides that, I can't just be in the air. I also need to be, so I'm going to click and add another one. Ground's got to be true, which means I'm going to have to be on the ground. If I'm not on the ground, then then I can't be running, right? All right, that makes sense. Now, to go from running back to idle, I'm going to need to make a transition, and it's going to be speed. I'm going to say is less than, okay, 0.025. So basically, once I get to a certain speed, it has to be less than that speed, and then it's good. And again, click on this, and I'm going to have to say that, yes, I am going to have to be on the ground. Okay, that makes sense. All right, this one to here is actually pretty simple. I'm going to click on this transition. So to go from idle to jump, I just need to not be on the ground. That's a jump. Okay, and the opposite is true the other way. So I'm going to hit plus, and I'm going to say to go from the ground back to idle, you're going to have to be on the ground, right? So boom, boom. Now to go from a jump to a run, I'm going to click on this, hit plus. My speed is going to be greater than 0.025 because I got to be moving. And I'm also going to have to be grounded. Ground, boom, okay? And to go from a run to a jump, I'm going to click on this, and I just need to not, right, ground, and I need that to be false, okay? Because I can be moving forward, so it doesn't there doesn't need to be a speed or not be a speed. I just need to be jumping. Okay, so there we go. So now we have that set up. Our parameters are set up that say, these things need to happen in order for them to be good to go. All right, so now let's go ahead and now nothing's driving this quite yet because I said speed, but that's just a made-up variable. It doesn't mean anything to it, so we have to fix that. So I'm gonna click on player, and we're going to have to add some components to it in order to make it controllable. Okay, so just like we did the other thing, like with the car and what have you, the main way we're going to function on this is just to add a rigid body. Now you see we have all these physics. There's also ones that are specific to 2D, and basically they're the same thing. They're just a 2D version. So I'm going to do a rigid body 2D, and this will allow us to add a force to it, which is good. Go to your constraints though, and freeze the rotation Z, because otherwise he might spin around and then it gets kind of funky. You don't want to do that. Okay. All right, so the other thing we need to do right now is that if I were to hit play on this, what you're going to watch is, whoop, he falls, right? So that's no good. So I actually need to make him move forward. Or I need him to be, well, actually, there's nothing underneath it, but I need him to be able to collide with something, and he doesn't have a collider, so I'm just going to add a component, physics 2D, and choose the shape that makes the most sense with what your character is. In this case, he's kind of boxy looking, so I'm going to do a box collider 2D, and I'm on scene, right? Yep, I'm going to zoom in here. All right, and I'm going to click on the edit button, and you can see the box here, and I'm just going to make it roughly the size of my dude. Okay, good, good, and good. And then I'll click on this button again, and now that's set up. I'm going to go ahead and hit Command S to save, because we haven't saved in a while. All right, we're going to make another object that's going to go on his feet that basically is going to check whether he is touching the ground. So if that object is touching the ground, it'll say ground is on. Okay, so I'm just going to go to create empty, and we'll name this one ground check. Okay, I'm going to add a component of physics 2D to it. Again, another box collider. I'm going to zero all these transforms, so that way it's right centered on him, and that's where his center point was. I'm going to edit this collider so that it's just basically under his feet. All right, and this is going to be, where are you? Okay, and this is going to be our tester. Okay, and you might need to adjust this based on, whether it's actually colliding correctly or not. Click that back off, and then you want to do is trigger, because what we want to have happen is that this isn't actually going to physically bump into things. What I want it to do is just trigger something to happen. In this case, it'll be a script that says the ground is touching. Okay, this way it'll actually penetrate through things, unlike the other box collider we put on him, which will actually hit and bump into stuff and won't allow you to move through it. Okay, so that's good. All right. One other thing I want to do too is actually make our ground. So in this case, I didn't actually make like a nice background. So we're just going to use what I have here, which is just this leaf. So I'm going to drag and drop this up here. I'm just going to call it leaf so it doesn't have so many zeros in it, like that. I'm going to add a component to it because I need it to be this guy to be able to run into it. So physics 2D, box collider, and then I'm going to edit the collider, and I'm just going to make it roughly go to half of this, like so. Boom, boom, boom. Great. All right. And then I will click this back off. All right, great. Now I need another leaf because I want to put a bunch of these in a row. Now I could do this every time, but that would be a lot of work. So what I'm going to do instead is this. Now they have this leaf kind of set up, and I can do other things to make it special. I don't know, whatever would make sense. I can actually take it up here, click and drag it on top of prefabs or anywhere in here. But in this case, I want it to be on a prefab. See how it makes this little box? This is now a prefab. So what I can do, and you'll see this turns blue, is I can keep dropping these in here, and all of them will have the same properties and things that I had set up. So it's basically just a pre-packaged object that we can keep reusing. So like, let's say you have like a game and there's zombies. You can have you can make a zombie, have the animation, everything hooked up, it being able to attack, the whole 9 yards, and then throw it into prefabs, and then you can have the code automatically grab and regenerate the zombies to have them keep coming, which is actually very useful. So it's the same thing as like instancing, more or less. I think it's called instancing, or creating symbols and things in Flash. Okay, so I'm gonna go like that, and then I'm gonna grab and make another one. We'll put it right here, and you can do a whole slew of these, but this is good enough for me. All right, great. So now if I hit play, you'll see he should just go, boom, he falls right on the leaf. All right, so here's another thing that's happening. If you look, you can see that he is actually happening. Don't worry about the jumping right now. The leaves are overlapping him, right? So in order to make that not happen, what we can do is I can select the player, and you'll see sorting layers. So usually you can add a sorting layer, and basically those are typically, background, midground, foreground. Right? When you have a video game, you'll see like a parallax, think of Mario or Sonic or one of those. The background was a little bit slower, and then the character moves a certain speed, and then sometimes there's foreground elements that move faster. We can do kind of the same thing, and you can add and then organize all your items like that. So you could have one that's the background, and all of those items are going to be connected to that, and those will actually rest behind, and then you can have a midground, and you can have a foreground, or whatever you want to call them, and have as many as you'd like. Or, and then within those, you can actually have orders within those layers themselves. So kind of like those are groups. And then in those groups, you can have them rest on top of each other. But I'm not going to bother making the sorting layers. I'm just going to add a 1 on top of this guy. And now when I hit play, you'll see he's in front. Okay, so basically it goes from 0 and then forward. So these guys, if you look, are all on 0. And I'm just having them all be on the default sorting layer. So basically everything's on the same group. But now this guy's in front. Okay, so that's good. Yay. I'll just say this real quick. Okay. So the next thing to do is actually write the script. So what I'm going to do is to make him move and all that. What I'm going to do is actually make that a separate video. And that way, if you want to just throw the script in there or just read the script, you can do that. And you can just skip the next video and go to the one afterwards where I hook some more things up. But that way you don't have to like listen to me explain as I'm scripting it. Okay, so good.